Do you want to be OP like this? Do you want to kill everybody in your path and never have to worry about Fallout 76 bullies? Well, you've come to the right place. I am going to give you the most overpowered build for Fallout 76. If you thought we were going to talk about them baby range builds, you were wrong. We're talking about melee. Alright, enough of that voice. That actually kind of hurts. What's up guys, I'm Burner Reborn and I'm going to show you what I think is the most overpowered build in Fallout 76. Alright guys, to start off with, you definitely want to have your 15 strength. Strength is basically the most important stat for any melee build. And of course, partnered with those strength stats, we want the following perk cards. Slugger, Expert Slugger, and Master Slugger, the three prime cards that you need to be able to hit like a truck with any two-handed weapon. You get a total of 60% damage increase just for having these three perk cards equipped. And since we're using two-handed weapons, they weigh a ton. That's why I took Martial Artist. Martial Artist reduces the weight of the two-handed weapons that you use by 60%. And on top of that, the swing speed is 30% faster. And I don't know if you guys have ever wielded a two-handed weapon in Fallout 76, but the swing speed is ridiculously slow. And last but not least, we got Incisor. 75% armor penetration. Guys, that's ridiculous. So that means no matter what kind of armor your opponent's gonna have, 75% of it, forget about it. You basically can attack people like they're made of butter. To be fair, with this build, they basically are. So guys, this is where things are starting to go more debatable, because a lot of these other stats don't directly affect the melee damage that you do, but I found that these to be the most useful ones for a melee build like myself. So you'll see in my build here that I have the three pick locks, the normal pick lock, the expert, and the master. Now obviously I would recommend these if you want to actually unlock things, and you probably noticed that I have 4 in perception. I also have green thumb, and I regret that choice. I probably would have left it at 3 if I could redo it. Green thumb basically allows you to grab twice as much every time you harvest something, but pretty early into the game I stopped harvesting altogether because all of my crops ended up going bad before I got to use them. So now that we're at endurance, I just want to point out that this is more so quality of life for this stat. It's more so the not having to eat as much, not having to drink as much, that sort of thing, not getting rads from drinking and eating. This isn't directly related to the melee build. This is just what I run, and in my opinion, the best perks that I can grab with my spare points. So most importantly, we have All Night Long. You suffer 60% less from hunger and thirst, and just as an FYI, all of these perks that I've been talking about up until now are fully maxed out. Then we have Aqua Boy, pretty simple. You no longer take rad damage when swimming and can breathe underwater. Again, quality of life. And here we got Lead Belly. In my opinion, Lead Belly is really, really good no matter what build you run, because you take no rads from eating or drinking. And I know that radaways and stuff are fairly common, but they are pretty heavy. So it's good to save on inventory space, because I only need to usually keep maybe 5 on me whenever I'm going out. And Dromedary is basically just a throw-in perk. I honestly had nothing else to put there. So again, this one's also very debatable. For the charisma stat, I picked Lone Wanderer because for the most part, I was playing alone. A lot of times when I seen other players, they didn't want to team up. Yeah, you can gain more experience and other benefits from this category if you're constantly in teams with friends and otherwise. But if you tend to find yourself play alone often, I highly recommend Lone Wanderer. Lone Wanderer, when it's maxed, gives you 20% less damage and 30% AP regen. And when I say less damage, I'm referring to damage to you. So you basically get 20% reduction to all damage, which is pretty damn good. And again, the AP regen is really important for melee builds, because whenever you're using a strong melee attack, your AP tends to drop quite a bit. I also grabbed Travel Agent from the Charisma tree, originally not really knowing what else to pick, but it actually saves you quite a bit of caps. It's a 30% reduction on all fast travel. Depending on your playstyle, fast travel gets pretty expensive after a while, so that 30% reduction definitely helps. Save for something more luxurious, like a giant sledgehammer. So now that we're at intelligence, there's lots of stuff that you can do here. You could spec out for heavier weapons, you could do a lot of things. Again, just preference, but for me, at the time, I was having a hard time holding on to a lot of my stim packs. I ended up using them fairly fast. As a melee build, you get attacked a lot before you actually get to your target, so the extra 45% you gain from stim packs once this first aid perk is maxed is very crucial, at least to me. Makeshift Warrior is probably the only perk card in the intelligence stat that is basically mandatory. It will make your weapons, or melee weapons I should say, break 50% slower, and you can craft tier 5 melee weapons. Obviously this is important so you can make better melee weapons and they break less frequently. Now 50% might not sound like a lot at first glance, but believe me that saves on inventory space. I could literally use one sledgehammer for hours before I realize that it's getting to a point where I need to repair it. So like I said earlier, you have the option to kind of dual spec here, and I've been playing around with some kind of blend of a melee build and a heavy weapon build. It sort of works. I mean, I wish that I could have played around a little bit more with the stats to finalize this, but just know that you could do whatever you want here. I decided to play around and added Stabilized, which gives my heavy guns more accuracy and ignore 45% of the enemy's armor whenever I'm in my power armor suit. And since I'm almost always in my power armor suit, I figured, you know what, just in case either a Scorch Beast or something that's at range that isn't easy for me to go and attack is there, Stabilized. And now we're moving on to Agility. Action Boy is fairly important, not gonna lie. Action Point regenerates 45% faster? Yeah, I think so. So obviously that one's maxed, total of 3 points. And we also have Marathoner, which reduces the amount of AP consumed when you sprint by 40%. Now, you're probably thinking, Burner, what do these things have to do with a melee build? And like I mentioned before, AP is very important for melee builds. The less AP you use for other tasks and the more AP you can save for your two-handed melee strikes, the more one-shotting you're gonna do in Fallout 76. Alright, now we're moving on to luck, which you don't even need in a melee build because you just one-shot everything. No, I'm just kidding. But I decided to go with One Gun Army, which again is basically for the two-hand melee slash heavy weapon kind of mixture for the build. It basically makes your heavy guns 12% stagger, 12% chance to cripple a limb. It's not super important. I figured that it might be useful when I'm trying to make a Scorch Beast land on the ground with a heavy weapon, so that's why I decided to pick it. Serendipity, however, I do recommend for basically all melee builds, because basically what this thing does is when you're below 30% health, assuming that it's maxed, you gain a 45% chance to avoid damage. Now, when you're that close to the fray and you're fighting enemies at that close of a distance, that 45% dodge when you're trying to get your stim pack going is a lifesaver. So yet another total preference perk card. We got Pharma. Now the only reason I have this is because, like I was saying earlier, I was having a hard time holding onto my stim packs. So even just 1 point into this perk card gives me that extra 40% chance to find extra aid chemicals whenever you search a chemical container. As for the two-handed weapon I use the All Rise Sledgehammer. Now, I know that there's better options out there. You can farm for legendary sledgehammers that have more damage and better effects like Vampiric, which I would highly recommend. But if you're just looking to get your hands on a really good sledgehammer as quickly as you can, you could do the Mare for the Day quest all the way down in Wattega. And once you finish that quest, you will get the All Rise, I think 2-star legendary sledgehammer, and I find it to be pretty strong. Now, warning, I did make a mistake here. My All Rise is only level 40 because that's when I completed the quest. If you want to have a full powered All Rise, you need to complete the quest after level 50. I also use a Tesla rifle for my heavier weapon that I was talking about playing around with earlier. Honestly, it's not that strong. It might be stronger if I specialized in it a little bit more, but it allows me to at least do some damage to something at range or lower level enemies that I really don't want to just go up to and whack with my hammer, so that's basically my ranged option. When in doubt, use the Tesla. Now next, we're going to be talking about some things that you could do to the build to make it even stronger, which I haven't done because I just haven't really tampered with mutations yet. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, mutations can be given to you by basically anything that can give you rads, and there are positive and negative mutations. Now, there's 4 mutations that I could see benefiting a melee build like this, but the most important one is Twisted Muscles. Twisted Muscles increase your melee damage by 25%, and you have a better chance at crippling limbs. It's pretty much a no-brainer. If you can get this mutation, do it. Now, for a few mutations that aren't quite that powerful for a melee build but can still help it a little bit, we have Speed Demon, which increases your movement speed by 20%, and it also gives you a 20% reload speed, which we don't need, but the speed helps us get to enemies a little bit faster and therefore one-shotting a little bit faster. Less damage on us. We also have the Healing Factor, which gives you health regen of 300%, but it also reduces the effectiveness of your chems. So if you're running a build where you're finding that a lot more health regen is more useful than popping stim packs and things, well, it's probably a good mutation for you to have. And the last one we have is Marsupial. Your carry weight is increased by 20, which obviously is a boon for melee builds because they already have pretty good carry weight considering the 15 strength. And, you know, if they decided to go with other perks to increase the carry weight. But it also increases your jump height, which is what we're most interested in here. With 20% move speed, your jump height, your regen, and your extra damage to limbs and damage overall, you are going to turn yourself into a beast that is worthy of being called a mutation. Now, this is my personal preference. There might be builds that do more damage, like one-handed builds or even unarmed builds. I haven't really tampered with everything, but considering I almost one-shot everything and Scorch Beasts are 5 or 6 shots away, the build's really strong. And yeah, it'll probably get nerfed, so I would recommend to everybody to use it while you still can. And just in case you're worried that, you know, your build's already kind of messed up, they're actually going to be adding the respec, I think December 11th. They gave us some patch notes already, which you can check out in one of my other videos, which should show up at the end of this one. Basically, we have a bunch of quality of life improvements and other stuff like that, so go check that out if you're curious about the patch notes. But just know that you'll be able to respec if your build is a little bit messed up and, you know, you put some points in places that you didn't want to. So don't stress, don't worry, just be patient. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to show your sign of support. I'm Burner Reborn, and we'll see you in the next one.